So I read the book Through Gates of Splendor, written by Elisabeth Elliot, and she writes about the 5 missionaries that went to Ecuador who were killed by the Auca Indians, and I'm sure everybody here knows the story about it, so please don't be bored with what I'm about to say. But I'm going to specifically be talking about Jim Elliot because I had to pick one. Okay, so Jim Elliot was born in Portland, Oregon, to a family of Christians, and he was saved at the age of 6. And his parents encouraged him from the time he was born to that him and all of his siblings to live his life for Christ and to do whatever God wanted him to do. So he went into his college years preparing to be a missionary, thinking God was calling him to India, I believe, but God in the end had different plans. In 1950, he attended a linguistics camp. And he was able to learn under a missionary that was formerly a missionary to the I don't know how to say that, something Indians in Ecuador. And he learned the skills to write a language down for the first time, and that would later help him when he was in Ecuador with the Auca Indians. So this missionary that he learned under told him about the Quiechua Indians. I don't know how to say that. Okay. Anyway, this guy told him about the Auca Indians in Ecuador, how they were a forgotten tribe, and the Auca actually means savage. So he was told of the danger and the hostility these people showed towards especially white men. And Jim Elliot began to feel a burden for these people, and he started to think that maybe God was calling him to go to a missionary there. So his family and friends discouraged him from doing that because they were like, you're going to waste your life doing that. Why would you have a bunch of potential, why would you want to waste it knowing you will probably be killed? But he decided to follow the Lord's leading to Ecuador, and he spent the next several years just learning skills in his church, like prison revivals, radio programs, Sunday school classes. His partner was Edna Cully, who would later be going with him. They would meet up again in Ecuador to go to the Aucas. So I don't remember what year, 1951, he decided that he needed to find another unmarried man that would go to him to start the ministry there, and he found Pete Fleming. So they went back to Portland in November of 1950. I said the wrong date a minute ago, sorry. And they started making plans for Ecuador. So they headed to Ecuador in February of 1952, and they knew they were leaving behind a lot of success that they could have had, but they knew they were doing what God's will for them was. So they didn't start out with the Aucas. They had to learn a bunch of other things about the culture there. So they started in Quito just learning Spanish and the different culture of the Spanish part of Ecuador, not the Indians. And then later they went to the Quiechua Indians and learned stuff there. Before they went to the Aucas. So the first missionary that ever entered the Auca territory was Pedro Suarez, and he was murdered by spears in 1667. So for the next 200 years, they were pretty much left alone because nobody wanted to risk their life going to them. From 1875 to 1925, rubber hunters roamed the jungles, burning their homes, torturing them, enslaving the Aucas. So the Aucas, we could almost justify why they had so much hatred towards white men, because white men did horrible things to them, and why would they ever want to trust another white man again? So this was a challenge that Jim and Pete faced as they hoped to bring God's message of love and salvation to the Aucas. By 1955, Elliot and the 4 other missionaries that were with him, they started Operation Auca, and they were making all the preparations of how they would get into the Auca village. So Nate Saint, who was a missionary pilot, he discovered an Auca settlement while he was just flying around the area. And they devised a plan to lower gifts to the Indians once a month. And at first the Indians were very apprehensive about what they were doing. But eventually there was a lot of excitement about it, and the whole village would come to the area, and then after a few months of doing that, the Indians were like, oh, we can give them gifts back. So they would put their own stuff in the basket for the missionaries to take back with them. So after several months of this once a week exchange, the team decided that they were ready to make physical contact with the Aucas. January 3rd, 1956, they set up camp about 4 miles from this village, and they just waited there for 3 days. They would like go through the jungles, try to see if there had been any Aucas, like if there was any trace of them, and there really wasn't. Oh my goodness, I gotta hurry. Anyway, so an Auca man came and made contact with them on the beach, and they were really excited about it, and they're like, oh, maybe he'll come back. They couldn't communicate, and he actually said, the author said, for these men, the drive to deliver the Aucas the message of redemption was blocked only by the language barrier. If only they might suddenly leap over the barrier and convey to the Indians one hint of the love of God. So they couldn't even witness to them because they tried like using their hands to like point to God, but like they couldn't. Anyway, so January 7th, they went to bed that night wondering if they had done what they needed to interest the visitors. January 8th was the day that they all were killed. A group of Aucas came into them and killed them. It took days for the rescue teams to find them. But yeah, okay, so by 1958, they were finally able to get into the village. The wives and their kids and some other people were finally able to do that. Present day Ecuador, there's like 17 million people. 90% of them are Catholic. There's complete freedom of worship. There's a great spiritual awakening among the Indians. These are obviously, like, we have the group from our church. There's a lot of missionaries to Ecuador, but there's still a need for more. There's great room for improvement. In conclusion, this is what Jim Elliot was quoted saying, I don't remember which year. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose. Our lives aren't for our own, they're for God, and no matter what we may think we should do, God's plan is always better than ours.